Welcome to Radiant Health, how to create health from the inside out. I'm your host, Lori Waka, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today. I hope you've been able to find a nice, comfortable place where you can just sit back, relax, and take it all in. You never know, today might just be the day that you hear exactly what you need to hear. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Anna Urrea. She inspires women to bring into the light, to challenge and disrupt the long-held beliefs, assumptions, and subtle cultural messages accepted without conscious questioning. This frees them to live their deepest yearnings, highest potentials, and most radiantly healthy life. Anna was trained as a transformational change agent and leader by Dr. Claire Zammit in her Global Feminine Power Professional Leadership Training. Anna uses generative questions to shift a woman's relationship to herself to allow her to find her own permission to be her authentic self. Why? Because it is the most radiantly healthy, most generous, that is caring of others, self to be. Anna, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Lori, thank you for creating this. This is an example of one of the principles that I'm starting to really appreciate, and that is that we as women cannot become ourselves, our best selves by ourselves, that it is through connection and support and community with others, like-minded souls, that we actually move to a fuller and wider and more wonderful, satisfying place. And you are incredible what you've done in this summit, and I'm so glad to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And you hit on so many things that are so important to me, like connection, community. And I think we want to be a part of that. And sometimes it can be so hard, especially we get disconnected and we don't even realize it. And and I was actually, so I always start by asking what radiant health means to you. And it sounds like, I imagine that it's going to be a little bit about what you just spoke about. So what does radiant health mean to
Oh
you?
my goodness. There are so many things that open up for me in this whole conversation. And I just appreciate the opportunity to do my own inner work and introspection and checking out what these things mean, because I've grown enormously just in this time, just thinking about what is it that I could actually share with other women that would help them to shift as I am shifting. And I am going to say, first off, I am a work in progress. It ain't done yet. So these are just things I'm noticing along the way. And so radiant health means to me, and here's what I want to do. I want to turn it around, because that's what kept happening. I was thinking, is radiant the adjective of health? Or because I got really big in English I used to like to diagram sentences and we'd figure out which was the adjective and okay.
Oh,
So
how
excuse
fun.
my nerdiness right here for a moment. That to me, radiant health is based on radiance. Radiance, the noun, the actual thing. And so what is radiance? And when you have radiance, then health is just a natural benefit. It's a natural consequence of the radiance. And I think some of your other speakers have addressed this in various ways. And so for me, what I'm looking at is what is radiance? Is it something that I have to do? Is it something that I turn on? And I realize for me, it's that it's already there. When we're born, babies are radiant. And then through the process that we all understand and know and known about of socialization and everything, well-meaning as it is, it starts to put smudges on the mirror of our own self that is radiating what is naturally there because of the God's gift, or whoever we want to call it, the creator gift of our own existence. And so if we approach it that it's already there, and then all I have to do is remove the smudges and the dirt, like when every time I go and clean a mirror, I think, okay, this is sort of what I'm doing to do in my life, to remove that which is blocking that which is actually there. So that's my idea about radiant health. And then health, our bodies, our physical bodies are simply reflections or natural responses to the open, healthy, the open, the freedom that we have, the cleanness that we have of being able to reflect that natural light which is there.
I love that. You're so right. We are born with this radiance. I haven't, really heard it said like that, but it's so true. And I love the analogy of like wiping off the mirror, clearing the smudges, and because that's what happens to us. I think by age 7, is that the right age that we become who we with our belief systems and
Yes,
it,
yes.
go ahead and maybe you can explain it better because it sounds like
Okay. So I'm going to just say for myself, I recognize that my journey to, which is still continuing to find that radiance, has been, I think, for many women, it's to be able to connect with our authentic self, to that deep self. And because of these stories that we have taken in, and it was well meaning, and we as young children, um, we did the best that we could. A 5-year-old or even a 3-year-old doesn't have the self reflecting ability to say, I know that's what you think, but that's not what my inner spirit telling me. So
right.
we take it in. So now here we are at various stages in our life trying to figure out, wait a second, what is actually authentic me and what is the story that I'm told? And it is very, very difficult to tell the difference to, because in psychological terms, we've interjected a lot of those stories and we can't actually tell the difference between myself and that story. So that's the story of me. And then we look to our culture and our society to reflect who we are. And that's the thing that has been the biggest thing for me, because if any of you know the Myers-Briggs system of typologies and so forth, it's not that I use it for describing necessarily who I am only, but it was very important to me when I found that community, because it could reflect and tell me who I was that was different from the culture that I'm living in and the values that the culture has. Nothing wrong with it, but there are differences. And so one of the big things that was one of the big things that I did was I learned about the Myers-Briggs types and I learned who I was. And so then I could begin to be self-validating. Oh, I know this is the message that I'm getting from out there, but that's not who I am. And still there is a price that we pay for it, like feeling out of step, like feeling I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm not worthy, I don't fit in. How do I find my place of value in here? Because there's nobody out there that's giving me the message, and I'm not giving that message to myself.
Right.
And so one of the other next big things that happened for me was to find communities that could validate who I am. So that I joined a group that studied Myers-Briggs type and found a lot. And fortunately, I'm in an area in Berkeley, California, San Francisco Bay Area, where there are a lot of people who understand it, are actually been into. So this organization has been going on for 35 years. So off and on, I've been in and out of it. So it's been incredibly helpful. So number one principle is find a community that reflects who you actually feel you are more innately without judgment. Now, that community may be a community that later on you see, yeah, but not quite or not totally. So you add another community. Maybe you keep on with that, but you add another community. The other thing that I did was to then, and this is probably one of the biggest and best things. So I started transcendental meditation a million years ago, like a million years ago. And I wanted to know more about it. So the only way to do that was to become a teacher. So I became a teacher when Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was actually still available to teach. So he is actually our teacher on our teacher training course. And the reason I'm saying this is because I've been blessed with sometimes being in the right place at the right time and being smart enough or open enough, aware enough to be able to say yes.
Oh, yes. That's key, isn't it?
That is something as I'm looking over at my life review, which is also another interesting thing to do. Uh, Sidebar here, when you do a life review or a review of anything that you're doing, make sure that you are sitting with your compassionate observer self,
That is a really good point.
not the critical judge.
Uh-huh. Not the judgmental,
The
huh?
critical judge will try to get in there, right? I mean, they're sitting at the table, right?
Oh, yeah.
And now the critical judge is standing there and he's pounding his fist, or she is, and saying, "Ha, no, no, sweetheart, that's not you. You know, this is, you know."
Yeah.
And so, and then if we believe those stories, then that's where we get inhibited and everything. And I know, because I know that territory, that judge is still sitting over there, you know. And
Oh,
after I finish this interview, that judge is going to have a wonderful time with me. He's going to try to get in there and say, "But you didn't say this, and you didn't do that, and you were too loud, and you were too
yeah,
noisy."
I know. And you're so right. I mean, and that critical judge is always around, isn't it?
Always,
And will always
always,
be. But
and will always be.
yep.
So then what happens is we then get the choice of which voice to listen to. But we have to be able to discern who it is that's talking
Yes.
at that time.
That, you know what, that's so true. And can I want to just circle back to the Myers-Briggs, because I'm familiar with it, and in fact I believe I've taken it. But just for any viewer who may not know exactly what that is, do you mind just sharing?
Oh, okay. So it's based on Carl Jung's theories about how we are wired naturally. Like, how do we get our energy? And boy, there's so much this is another whole conversation,
I
but
know.
just quickly, yes, how we're wired, what our natural preferences are for extroversion, introversion, meaning where do we get our energy? Not how much can I be out there with people, but where do we actually get our energy? Because I am an introvert, but after you finish this conversation with me, you'll say, no, that woman couldn't be an introvert. But you wait and see me for the rest of the day, I'm like, you know, I'm totally into myself. So it's introvert extroversion, whether you prefer to take in information through senses, or whether through an intuitive kind of way of doing it. And then when you make your decisions, do you prefer to use the linear kind of thinking, or do you prefer to use a more abstract, maybe that's guided more by the heart? And then there's ways that you organize your life around time and so forth, which is, are you right there? And you've got a built-in clock in you, like my husband, who was an airline pilot, who that was a perfect match for him. And I have no clock inside of me. So so it's those kinds of things. And then there's you know, Jung was a very deep person, so there was a lot more to it. But what I'm wanting to say here, the reason I brought it up is because it had a way of validating me when I couldn't find any other place to go to find out who I really was. And a big part, I'm going to come back to radiance, a big part to me of radiance is being in deep alignment with who you authentically are.
That is so important. And that brings me to how would you say Radiant Health has been key to supporting you in the life that you want to live?
Okay, great. Oh, I'm so glad. You see, this is the beauty. That's another thing. Find the right people to ask the right questions. Because when you are wanting to grow, and I assume that all that are watching in this community are interested in growing to some degree. We all have our tolerance for it. Like, yes, I want to grow, but tonight I'm going to veg out. I'm having popcorn, I'm watching a movie, and that's it. Okay.
Yes.
So,
and
okay,
that's
so
perfectly
that's great.
okay, isn't it?
Right, exactly. Because there's that balance. So what radiant living, radiant healthy living has done for me when I look back on it. So from a long time ago, I started being aware of what I was eating. That doesn't mean I was eating all just wonderful food, because there's many times, you know. It's taken me a while to find out what does resonate with me, not by somebody's specific diet, but what does resonate with me.
Right.
And it changes because I'm changing. I was aware that with the TM program, there's also a set of yoga postures that are recommended to do. And so I've done yoga off and on for all these years. And then there's an alternate breath practice that also helps. Just do for a few minutes before you meditate sometimes, if you care to. And that helps to settle. That's another one of the quick tip tools to shift things is to, when I'm a little bit, oh my God, like this, I sit down, like before this interview, I sat down, I did a little bit of alternate breathing, and it coordinates the autonomic and the parasympathetic and the autonomic nervous system.
I
Okay.
believe so.
That's as much as my science goes. So
Yeah,
I
me
hope somebody
too.
else can do that. But what I'm just saying is I know the effects is that it helps to settle me and it helps to get both parts of me kind of in balance and out of the anxiety response.
That is such a good tip. And you've reminded me that is something I did maybe 10 years ago in personal training with energy healing. And I had forgotten about that. Isn't that something that we can do things that are good for us and just life happens and you slowly kind of, if you don't do it habitually, you
Oh
forget.
yes, that's why we have friends around us who are awake and on our path of growth because they can remind us. And that is totally whether you join a community, have a community or not, me surrounding myself with people that are moving in the direction that I want to go. I cannot tell you, there's so many things where they reminded me of something inadvertently. They weren't trying to take care of me, but it was just inadvertent conversations like this. And we go,
Yep.
oh my God, right. So okay. So what going back to the question. So I started some of those practices and have been sort of doing them on and off for a long time. So when I'm going to tell you this, that my husband and I were married for about 20 years plus, and I got married relatively. I finished college, got married, and I finally thought, I think maybe I'd like to have a child. And it was time was moving on while I was trying to decide, and so in the process, I was now 44 and hadn't had a child yet. Hadn't tried really, but hadn't had a child. And so the bottom line is that I had the most wonderful, natural, easy pregnancy and an incredibly quick, easy birth
Oh, wow.
at 45.
Beautiful.
And it was a gift. It was totally, totally a gift. And that's at a time when I remember seeing the doctor's report. It said elderly pregnancy. And I thought,
Oh,
what damn man, we're going to have some talk here about what does elderly mean, because I'm not ready for that. That's not who I am.
I know, I hear you. I had my son, my son when I was 39, almost 40. And I remember those words that
Yes.
for me, I handled it different than you. I love how you handled it. You handled it powerfully. I was more like, oh wow, yeah, I am getting old. It was just I allowed that to get in my head.
Okay. So thank you for saying that, because that's what I'm talking about. You just read that in the first line of who I am and what I want to do is I want us all to ask questions, to not make assumptions, not to agree with what we're told. So the doctor told me that, and I'm not really so much of a rebel, but I love my freedom, and I want to be who I am, not who somebody else tells me to be. And finally, after all of these years and life experience, I'm finding a way to do that. And it's thrilling. I don't advise everybody to have to wait so long because I think it's more fun if you can do it sooner. But that was one moment where I recognized that because of the way that I was living in connection with radiance, which I didn't call it that at the time,
Right.
but in some way, that way allowed me to have something and do something that I really wanted.
I
And so that's what it did for me. Now, I think physically, I am way more in balance than I probably ever have in my life because I continue to work on this. And Ayurveda is another thing
Okay.
that I know some people have been talking about and so forth. And so I know that I'm a Vata of the three types. I'm a Vata and then Pitta. So Vata is kind of like up here and all around. It's very energetic and quick and everything. But sometimes I need to wear my heavy shoes to keep my feet on the ground, right? So I know how to deal with that now because I've studied it. But in my younger time, I was much more emotionally volatile in a way that I actually couldn't handle my emotions because I'm very intense and I didn't know how to handle them. So that doesn't mean I became a raving maniac, but it means that there were times when I would behave in ways that was not in alignment with who I really, really was and who I wanted to be.
And may I just ask real quick, do you think that is that because we aren't we aren't in alignment with ourselves? So our behavior is different than what it would be if we were in true alignment with ourselves.
That's a huge question, and that's what, isn't that what we go to therapists for and everything, is how come I know what I am, who I am, but in that moment, that's not who I'm showing up at. I spent a long time in therapy, and the wonderful thing was that the man, a wonderful man who was my therapist, understood the feminine, understood women, and understood both sides and could help me.
Wow.
And so he was like my stand-in compassionate observer for a long time until I could understand how to access that within myself. And so one of the things I wanted to say, this is another tip. I hate saying it like it's a tip because it's like, oh, aren't you clever? You thought this. It's just something I noticed that I do is I have moments where I fall in love with myself.
I love that.
And I really mean fall in love with all the euphoria and all of the blissful romanticness. Turn it toward myself. And here's the thing. I don't have to give myself permission to agree that I'm the most wonderful, most delightful person ever. It's just for that moment.
Yeah, that's
Just
beautiful.
that moment.
We should all do that. Like, yes,
yeah.
That's so.
I invite everybody in to do that sometime today. Before the day is up, make a commitment. There'll be some moment that I could just fall in love with myself. And then what happens is those moments seem to say, I see this neurophysically, that I'm sure that there's you setting up new neural pathways.
Yes.
Neural pathways that go, oh yeah, I remember this. That felt really good. I'm going to fall in love with myself rather than just 5 seconds. I think maybe I'll extend it to 15.
And it sounds good. Even when you talk about it, like fall in love with yourself. I mean, that sounds inviting and it sounds like a beautiful moment that you can.
Yes.
Because really, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like, nobody can love us more than we can love ourselves. Like that's the ultimate non-conditional love. And I feel like we need to give ourselves that unconditional love more than we do. Like, I feel like.
Oh, for sure. But why don't we? Why don't we? Why don't we? We all know we should. And in this moment, when we're all sitting here and listening to this is a really good idea. Then I get up here and I go in and I see something that, I didn't do or forgot or did something didn't go well. And at that moment, I may not be in love with myself. However, the cool thing is that when you start to set the pattern, I think this is the way I'm experiencing, it does start to grow because our bodies, Lori, let me just tell you, when I saw your face when you were saying that, of how wonderful it felt to fall in love, just the thought of it, your face changed.
Really? I believe that because it touched me. It really did. When I heard you say that, I was like, yes, that's funny.
I know.
I saw that.
I know. And I sense that. And so what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to reflect to you is just the thought of it changes our neurophysiology. So that's all we have to do. I mean, it's just a moment by moment kind of thing. And the other thing I want to go back to is the assumptions, because I'm really wanting to encourage us to question the assumptions we make. And the assumptions are so subtle that we don't even know they're there. And that's another reason why hook up with a community that is really curious and asking questions, even to the point of being adamantly, well, excuse my language, but hell no, that's not true. And I'm not going to go along with that, because sometimes we need that intensity to counteract. Do you think that's true? I mean, do you find that to counteract all of the stuff that's been laid on us that we know isn't actually true, but we don't act that way?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you circled back, because I wanted to apologize because I interrupted your story about wanting to be pregnant, and you were able to get pregnant and have this, beautiful.
That's it. That was the whole thing. It was just, that's it.
Okay. Well, and
that's one of the benefits. That's just one of the benefits that I think I received from being in touch in some way with a radiant style of living that gives me health.
And I'm so glad that you brought it up, because you're right. I completely agree with you. And I actually went to one of your workshops a few years ago. I had just turned 50, and your talk just resonated so well with me, because I don't when I turned 50, I didn't feel old. It was nothing like that. The numbers didn't scare me. But at the same time, you know, everybody kind of makes a big deal like, oh, wow, you're 50 now. You turned 50. Oh my gosh, you're 50. And also, I had, you know, I think family and friends, people that were in my life that were dealing with chronic illnesses. And I was starting to allow that to get into my head like, oh, wow, you know, I'm 50, I'm getting old. And I noticed that I had some chronic pains that were coming up for me, which I'm sure was caused by things I was dealing with. And what I was starting to do was like, if my son wanted to play basketball, oh, my hip hurts. I'm getting old. I can't do it right now. And after your workshop, it was so beneficial because I realized I was allowing those thoughts in my head. I am old. I'm getting older. I'm turning old, and it was all just because of um, the feedback I was kind of allowing in to my head, which wasn't my own personal feedback. Because I mean, I still feel like I'm probably about maybe 21, 22. You know.
That's it. That's it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Lori. Exactly. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
and I know you've shared like a lot of good ways that you do practice radiant health. Is there, so that was one of the things I was going to ask you, like, how do you
Yes.
do radiant health on your day-to-day basis?
And it's so funny because it's so ingrained in me. It's my style of life that I don't think about it doing it that way, but there's something nice to think about doing that. So I meditate regularly in the morning and in the afternoon. And I either try to do some yoga, it may be just a few positions of my favorite. I do the breathing that really has made a huge difference for me in the last year. I'd kind of forgotten about it and not done it. Um, so I do those things and I eat in ways that are generally beneficial for me, that I like, that I enjoy. And as much as possible when I'm cooking, I enjoy the cooking, but and I will be nurturing myself. I'll put on one of your interviews, and I might be listening at the same time because I'm nurturing. I know you. Some people say, "Well, you don't want to spill your mind like that." I go, you know what? It's okay. I'm nurturing. This is my nurturing moment, and I'm nurturing all parts of me.
Oh,
So
I
I'm
love
nurturing
that.
my spirit because I'm eating, I'm taking in, I'm eating, I'm digesting what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
as well as what I'm going to be taking in physically and eating my body. So I eat well. Um, I'm really bad about keeping a really regular schedule in terms of getting to bed. I am really aiming for hitting the angel train at 10 o'clock, lights out, you know.
I I can understand that. I'm generally good about setting a bedtime for me, but I noticed that while doing this summit and I have a skincare business and a family, of course, um, that and I'm doing some training right now too. That I've totally fallen off of being good about my sleep, and I can tell it's made a difference for me.
That's why we do it, isn't it? We get off, so we go, oh, yeah, that's why. And it was just like eating that wonderful cheesecake and having that coffee, and it's 9:30, and you go, no, this is a celebration. And you go, this feels so good. And then the next morning you go, oh, yeah, I remember why I decided that I was not going to have heavy desserts after 7:30 or something like that, because I don't feel as good, but it's all right. I just had to remind myself.
Right, that's true. It's just a reminder, right?
Yes, and it's for good cause. Right now, what you're doing, I sense, Lori, that you're in a very big growth spurt.
I would agree with that. I've like this last year has been a real growth spurt for me.
Yeah,
Huge, in fact, especially compared to all the previous years, or at least for a long time, I should say.
yeah.
And it feels good. And I have to say, like, it's so out of the box for me to do this. And to anybody who is considering doing something out of the box, like really just go for it. And Anna, you and I were talking earlier about it's okay to do it. I don't know what other word to use, but do it dirty and maybe do some things wrong rather than wait until it's that perfect time, because it's never, in my opinion, it's never going to be that perfect time.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that when we first started talking about doing this, because for me, this was not really a good time to be doing this. It wasn't the next thing on my agenda. And then I just had to realize, okay, but it's here. And so get into the deliciousness of it. And so then mobilize around that. So sometimes, yeah, bedtime, it doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean that I don't know and that I won't get back to it. So that's another thing that I'm doing. And then a very big thing that happened about 7 years ago is when I had the impulse inside that it was time for me. My son had moved out. He was now on his own and said, hey, I'm self-sufficient. And so I knew that I was having space for me because in our culture, it's a lot. You're amazing that you're able to do family and all of these things that you're doing at the same time. I wasn't able to, and I knew that about myself. So I joined the training, the Feminine Power training with Dr. Claire Zammit. And I've been growing in that community, which the community has grown and changed for the last 7 years.
Oh,
And I go, oh my God, how have I? So the thing is that I then, and this is the thing that I would really, really, I see how important it's been for me, and I could see for others, is that I found a group that was mirroring who I actually am. Mirroring meaning they were reflecting back to me the radiance that I was putting out, and they were appreciating it, and they were naming it back to me. So having it named is also really important rather than, oh yeah, you're really a wonderful person. Well, what does that mean? That means that I find that you're open, that you listen, that you have a clear mind, that you can reframe things for me, and you're willing to help, and that you're intelligent, and that you're curious, but you have those things named,
yes.
and it makes a whole difference. So find a community, some group, whether it's a group of friends or whatever. And then beyond that, I've been able to name a couple of people who are now my um, they're my support buddies. They're actually my growth buddies for specific intentions. Like I have several of them. And I know that when I get into some trouble and I just need a quick shift, will you please just remind me who I am? So I send a text and saying, I'm going to be doing this interview today, and I'm actually not feeling like I have anything of value to say, although I can sure spend a lot of time. Would you just remind me who I am? And so what comes back is, you don't have to worry about what you're saying so much because you just embody it. And so just sit there and just be. Well, of course, that isn't what I would do, but that just reminded me. So what I'm saying is because I've made a commitment with this person, and I do the same thing for her. So find somebody in your life that you could make a mutual intention to be there for each other in particular ways.
That is so powerful, and you're absolutely right. And like you said, finding that community that reflects back to you what you're putting out there, and even if it's like something bad, you still see that mirror reflection, and then that way you can take a look at it and see why why you've sourced this person, why it's
Right.
reflection. And I just want to mention, I just want to acknowledge that you felt resistance to this, but you went ahead and you went through, the whole process of this interview. You touched base with your buddy and you did it, because I think that's so important too. Like sometimes we feel resistance and then we're like, oh, nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. And you did it. I mean, you're doing it.
Well, because, and I've got this post-it here, which maybe you can see, it says, stay curious. Okay.
Oh,
Stay curious, meaning, oh, I wonder what that resistance wants me to know. I wonder what that resistance, because that's the whole thing. Even when I've got body aches or body pains, I'm thinking, I wonder what it is that my body wants me to know. Where am I not in alignment with my deepest self? Where am I blocking my radiance? Because my body's trying to tell me something. I've got this thing on my thumb right here, and I'm going, oh, what's going on there? I mean, it's like, no thanks. I don't do arthritis. Thank you very much. And so I'm wondering, what is it that you want me to know? And then I want to listen to you. And then your job is done, and then you can just be wonderful again. So
yeah.
I'm inviting us all to stay curious. And the thing about having a buddy is part of the commitment with this buddy is that when I ask for it, I'm asking for full feedback. Where are my growth edges? I want you to let me know, where are my growth edges? And there's a procedure that we can do that, very loving, and you've signed up for, you've asked for it. And so that's part of the growth, because we're all works in progress. And so I want to know, I'm committed and I can't see it myself. Or if I do see it, I see it through the eyes of the critical judge, and then you can't hear it.
Right. That's so true. That is so true. I have so many things more I want to talk to you about. And
No,
then
but the time.
I know I'm realizing, oh my goodness. So um, because of the time, I'm going to go ahead and ask if I feel like you've shared so many like actionable steps. Is there one in particular that you think would be like really good for our viewers to hear or to practice?
Yes, I think I've said that the value of creating a curious mind and the growth mindset. And you can find a lot online about the growth mindset. Even the big CEOs and companies now are beginning to embrace the growth mindset, where we don't mess up, we just do it one way. And now we harvest that and learn what might be something better I'll do in the future. And
I love
that growth mindset, okay, just as you said, so I'm doing this dirty, but it's done. So how would I then grow into something that is a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner? So it's with the growth mindset, but there's not a problem. Um, get to know yourself, get to know yourself deeply. I've used the Enneagram to know myself. I've used Ayurveda. I've used Myers-Briggs, as I said, therapy, friends, community, um, learning your personal style and your personal colors. It's not just about the surface, but it's about things that it tells you about your inside. So learn about yourself from a place of lovingness, not from a place of criticism, but also a place of, where more do I want to grow into? And do, how can I say this gently? Or do I don't want to say, don't take in all the judgments that are from outside, and ask yourself, oh, is it really true that I'm not very good at this? Or I'm terrible at accounting and all that kind of stuff? Does that mean I can't do it? I wonder, is there might be some part of it that I might be really good at. I've saved all my receipts. They're just not into my Quicken yet for 3 years. But does that mean that I'm less than? So question the assumptions. And there's so many assumptions, just as in that age workshop that I did. We make so many assumptions about, I'm 50 and now I'm supposed to be acting like this. So
Right.
keep a journal. I've got a little book. I've got a little journal. And after I did that workshop, I started keeping this journal and noticing all the times that I was telling myself something about my age. I was at the museum and I said, can you tell me how to get to the second floor? And he said, oh, yes, well, the stairs are there, but there's an elevator over there. You can take the elevator. And I walked away and I stopped and I went, oh, he sees my silver hair. And that means that I'm not able to take the stairs, or that I prefer to take the elevator. And I said, excuse me, I'm going to walk the stairs. And I think I'll go walk and I'll walk down. I think I'll go up about 3 or 4 times, So it's with that. And so noticing that was inside of me, even in the context that I was trying to live in, which is, you're not going to tell me what I'm supposed to be at this age. Last piece about that, I just caught a part of the Golden Globes the other night, and I saw Lear, is it Norman Lear, who's the great producer?
Yes.
Okay, that man was on screen. He is 98 years old. He was brilliant. He was clear. He has been working. George Allen, another one, working until his 100th birthday when he finally keeled over. Now, those people did not follow the predictions or what you're supposed to do. And by the way, I think George Allen also smoked a cigar regularly. So
Really?
there's so much. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, these things that tell us, oh, this is the diet that you need to have. I don't know. Is it what I need now? So ask questions. Just don't assume. And notice when you bought into it like I do, because when you notice it, then that'll begin to change.
Oh, I love that. That is such a good like tip, as you know, it's so important to just, like you said, don't just fall into what society, their expectations of who you are, because nobody knows who you are really but you. Um, Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to make sure to give you time. You have been so generous to offer a gift to our viewers, and I'll go ahead and let you tell them about this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. And I just want to tell you, I realize I have been so wound up and I've got so much I want to share, but I haven't, haven't maybe had the conversation as much back and forth, but you've asked some wonderful questions. And so what I want to say here is that I've mentioned several resources, that things that I have found useful to me. And I'd like to be able to give people how to get in touch with it or how to connect with that. There's a wonderful, oh, I just have to put this in because this is a woman who is, she's kicking butt. Okay. So she just wrote a book. It's just out. It's called Enlightenment is Sexy.
Oh,
Okay. Now, do we usually connect enlightenment with sexy? No. But here's the thing. This is what's happening now. This is what will take us and help us to go further. She didn't question whether that would. She walked into a TM center in Chicago. Her life was not going well. And she knew she had a lot more to give. And she started TM and she said, oh my God, this is turning my life around. She's just written this book. And the video promo that's on is such a scream because she's bleeping out every other word that's on there, which you wouldn't think. So I'm just saying that the book, I haven't read it yet, but I've read several of the parts of it. I'm putting that on that page also. And then on that page that I have in my gift, I also am putting 5 quick tips for shifting just in the moment. Like when you need to get out of where you are, it's just like 2-3 minutes, you can just shift. That's all it is.
oh,
And
I
so
love that.
I'd love to share that with people. And so please send me an email. I put my contact, you'll send them the contact information and I will get right back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll make sure to have that on the email that goes out with this interview. And before we go, is there any last things that you would like to share, or anything I may have forgotten?
Do we have another hour?
I know. I feel like we should do another interview, and I'm so sorry that I have to.
No, there's no sorry. The thing I want to remind people of also is the power is in the recovery.
Wow.
The power is in the recovery. Oh man, I screwed up. Okay, now it's going to take me 3 days to recover from this, or can I harvest it in a short time?
Yep.
And the good news is, remember, we're incredibly flexible human beings. Stay connected to your soul, listen to yourself with compassion and love, fall in love with yourself, and be curious.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just enjoy. It's such a gift to be alive most of the days. And there's days, okay? Most of the time. Hang on to that.
Thank you. I love that. Have the intention of joy. Have a joyous day, right?
Thank you, Lori. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you, Anna, so much for sharing your wisdom with us and being with us today. And thank you to our viewers. Thank you for taking time for yourself today and joining us. And I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow. Bye.